Welcome back to Vintage HLC Show and Tell. Today we're looking at King Charles. This is a fancy embossed shape that was made from roughly 1902 to 1907. So compared to the other fancy embossed shapes of this time period, this had a pretty short run, only about 5 years. It was designed by Arthur Mountford, who was art director at the time at Homer Laughlin. He's largely responsible for Laughlin art china as well as bridal toiletware. Now, one of the features of the embossing of King Charles involves the chain. So we'll look at this platter, this 9.5-inch platter, and we can see this chain embossing that's on the rim. And we can also see it on the hollowware. Look at this covered dish. Sometimes it's pretty faint, but the examples I'm showing you have pretty good strikes to them. But as with most of these fancy embossed shapes, a lot of them are going to be pretty weak. For example, this covered dish, we can barely see it on the lid, but it's there. This plate, it shows up really nicely simply because we have a flow blue effect going on. So you see the larger chain here on the rim, then you see a smaller one on the verge. Now there are 3 different markings used on King Charles. The first one is patent applied for. So we'll look at this casserole marking. We have the circle mark, King Charles, and patent applied for. The second marking was copyrighted. So let's see if this one has it. It does. We have the circle mark, King Charles, copyrighted. Then the third and final mark for King Charles has the fleur-de-lis logo. We'll go back to this platter. We have the fleur-de-lis marking with Homer Laughlin, then King Charles written out in cursive underneath. There are no date codes on King Charles markings. This line precedes the date code era of 1912. So now we'll look at a couple patterns. This is going to be a quick video because there's not a whole lot of patterns on King Charles. There's fewer than any of the other embossed shapes. Again, this is only a 5-year run. This treatment we saw before already when we were looking at the treatment numbers video. This is Campion that originated on American Beauty. Here it is on King Charles. This festoon border is treatment number 8944. Has the rose swags with all this gold tracing on the leaf embossing around the finial and some added details. Treatment number 8944. This was also used on Colonial as 4944. And the Angelus is 9944, so we will be seeing this treatment again. So this is your covered dish. Here's the covered casserole. This should have a treatment number as well, 8944. And a creamer. Again with this festoon border, and we see the added details in gold on the lip. This has our fleur-de-lis marking. Now this gold stamp treatment, and I hope I'm going to say this right, Arbutus, A-R-B-U-T-U-S. When we were looking at those treatment numbers in that video where we have all these shared numbers, we saw that when we get to Angelus it goes to 9,999, and then they start the prefix system with AX1 and AX2. Well, simultaneously in King Charles, they start KO1, KO2, and so forth. And there's only a few. I think it goes up to either KO7 or KO8. This one is KO4. We see the treatment number there in gold. So you only have a handful of treatments that use the prefix system in King Charles. Again, this is Arbutus. We have the covered dish. We have a covered oyster tureen with a ladle. We'll come back to this in a minute. And then we have the King Charles pickle with our gold stamp Arbutus. And this has the copyrighted mark. Another King Charles pickle, this time with the Seneca holly and filled in details. And it has the copyrighted mark as well. Covered, let's see, this is the soup tureen. So the oyster tureen's round, the soup tureen's going to be oval with a decal treatment. Butter pat, again with this festoon rose. This is 8944. The embossing is somewhat hard to see. It's kind of there. I don't know if that's going to show up at all. I can feel it. But again, with these fancy embossed shapes, sometimes it's really difficult to see. This piece with the flow blue embossing. We saw this before. This is a piece of Laughlin art china. We have this lady with rose in the hair. This is also Laughlin art china. This is called Chester Rose. So you can find specialty pieces with this particular decal on it. And a couple sauce boats. This one just has decals and gold trim. This one has an underglazed print of green mums. This was used on several different shapes of the time. And this one's decal with no gold trim. As our fleur-de-lis marking. Bone dish with gold stamps. Copyrighted marking. And you can see the chain embossing on this piece. And our 9.5-inch platter that we looked at the beginning has a Laughlin Beauty on it with some gold trim. A specialty piece. You wouldn't find a full line of dinnerware with that decal treatment. So now going back to these tureens, I want to talk about the ladles for a moment. Because in the first video I did, when I talked about tureens, I talked a little bit about ladles and said that they were used in multiple shapes. So your large ladle was used for your oyster tureen or your soup tureen, and the small ladle was used on a sauce tureen. I don't have a King Charles sauce tureen to show you, but I do have one in Hudson. And this particular one is decorated with treatment number H94. And the ladle has the same decoration. So they'll either be decorated or they'll be blank. Now, these ladles were used as early as the Golden Gate shape of the late 1890s and extends all the way to Republic. So you've got 11 shapes. In chronological order, they are Golden Gate, American Beauty, Colonial, Seneca, King Charles, the Angelus, Hudson, Niagara, Genesee, Empress, and Republic. So these ladles could be used with any of the covered dishes from those 11 lines. So I think that's going to be a pretty quick video on King Charles. This is a very challenging line to collect, or a challenging shape, I should say. I've been collecting for a while, and the only pieces I have of King Charles are the ones I'm showing you now. I'd love to find a teapot or a sugar bowl or any of their hollowware. If you're going to collect this, good luck. So I think that's going to be it for now.